to that through the Iowa Department of Public Health, so we can provide that at no cost to those individuals, because we need to reduce that incident and the prevalence of those diseases within the community. That's a concern of ours as a public health agency. In addition to that, the numbers that we have within that is we've also done 169 tests within the jail. We look at getting those individuals identified too, because we don't want diseases running rampant in some sort of confined facility such as that. In addition to that, in the area of tuberculosis, we do have a small grant that comes out of there from the state, but it primarily pays for the meds and a little bit of staff time or direct expenses. To give you an example, that in our number of tests that we have done actually have gone from about 488 down to 476. But when we have taken a look at the number of cases, there are two different categories that we get concerned about and that we have to expend staff time on. One is latent TB clients. We have actually seen in that area, we had 260 of them in 2017 and 113 in 2018. So our time expended in follow-up, investigation, and services to those individuals, basically it's almost doubled with the number of clients and individuals we have to track down. And then also within active cases, we went from 3 in 2017 to 7 in 2018. If it's an active case of TB, that means that we have to do observed distribution of medications to assure that that individual takes those on a daily basis. And those things are what we do in the public health realm, I guess, to protect the health of the public. And so those are some of the reasons why when I look at, like I said, those positions in nursing time was we were able to leverage and use some grant funding for, but now we're needing to go back to their disease prevention side and responses to that. And that's what's kind of dictated moving those over, returning those back into that 0.24 and 0.4 FTEs for those services. Bilingual, 0.45 interpreter is what we've done. We have an influx as we normally have had. We've always struggled with bilingual services and meeting the needs of those clients. It's a challenge many organizations passed. We did put in a 0.5. And then also we look at within our clinic is there's potential for a revenue reduction. Some of this is due to some of the Medicaid billing. We do a fee collection for the VFC program. But as we have looked at the trends for our revenue over the last 3 years, we're probably recognizing this year might be about a $13,000 reduction. And so then just down with the family, single to family, and then environmental, we did a flat tax asking there. And the reason why that is that we will have some additional revenue coming in there from the food fee increase that occurred that'll cover most of the anticipated, if not all the anticipated expenses in there. And then nutrition, we just hold it a standard $5,000, and that is simply because in our blood lead testing, we have to have a billable source for those services such as blood lead testing that we cannot bill to WIC, but it can be done by WIC staff. So that when a client comes in, those children can get blood lead tested when they're in there for a WIC appointment. It's just we have to ensure we have some coverage of that time in an alternate source, so we don't violate the contractual obligations here. Questions? Yes?
So a couple of them, thank you. The presentation is very good, and I understand the 20% health fund to make you whole, which I'd be supportive of. On these, do you have, over the last 4 years, the lab supplies, increasing costs, the custodial supplies, and the building maintenance supplies aligning with the expenditures? And the only reason I ask is I know that you're doing the budgeting in kind of a hybrid way because you have your own board there.
Right.
And yet, when we go kind of on a line by line item basis, we look at the last 3 or 4 years, and sometimes we try to prognosticate based on that. So, if you have those for, I'm just looking at those 3 up on 3012 for lab, as well as the anticipated revenue. Because what I'm seeing here is it sounds like there's some of these that are mandates that you don't really have a choice about, right?
Right, with the TB, the...
Well, like from the going from new staff family insurance.
Right.
You don't have a choice of whether you're going to pay that or not. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So I'm just trying to kind of separate out what is something that is either not mandated or is negotiable, because obviously those aren't. And so, and looking at what are the areas where we have some information for the last 4 years.
What we do have, I guess, the trends, what I've got what we budgeted for last year is what it was. And then what we take a look at is we go through the year-to-date expenditures at this point of what we anticipate to expend for this grant year and then what we actually expended last year. And so those are the two data points that we use for looking at trend to say what is our potential increased cost or cost for next year for those line items. Exact numbers I don't have, but those are pieces that are in there, and that's kind of how we've come up with that dollar amount. Custodial supplies, that's exactly, yeah, we did that 1175 that we upped, that is related to what we are anticipating. We have 8,500 this year and increasing that up. We would take a look and saying that's probably closer to what we'll end up spending maybe in this year. Underneath the lab supplies, that's just medical supplies are getting more expensive as we move through, and those are just specifically used within the lab, testing and those sorts of things.
So, just a comment or two. I'd like to see if we can kind of separate out a little bit, because I know one of the things that we looked at is, does this fit the category of an improvement request in the sense of this is an addition above and beyond where you're at right now? I'm not talking about the health insurance making that whole, but as far as these other positions, there's about $84,000 some odd dollars, right? Do I have the math right there?
As far as which, like the improvement expense.
Well, if you take the anticipated revenue reduction plus the other positions, or I guess just look at those three positions there and see if we believe that those are...
I would say the .45 interpreter could probably fall closely underneath that as far as an improvement expense. I would be hesitant to say when it's improvements, when it's the documented need and the expenditure and staff time spent on it that we look at with the two nursing positions. I mean, that's work we're going to have be able to do with the STDs and the TB work and that too. But the interpreter, that's probably one that would easily fit underneath that as far as an improvement. I'm not sure with with improvements where that definition would fit. But that's kind of one of the areas that I don't have funding to do it. I can't use grant funding. Within that is what it would be.
That grant funding was once there, is that?
No.
No,
not for doing our increased workload in TBs and STDs. Where the grant funding at was these staff also did a portion of their time in the home visitation, but because they're nurses is what it was, we have look at moving a portion of their time on underneath the home visitation would be where we potentially, to keep our client caseload that we're obligated to have, we would then backfill that position with what would be somewhat of a part-time. So we'll still be incurring the expense to do our client services because we have to have X number of slots that we fill within that, and that is all covered by the grant funds. But
and those are still at the current level funding?
Those are still at the current flat level funding. Yes, there's no increase in those that we've experienced. So that would be looking at putting someone in there, and it would probably be a non-nurse person.
So there's no backfilling for something that was once grant funded, is that correct?
Right, there's no back funding for something that was once grant funded.
So all we're really looking at is the allocation and say, is it too much or too little? And then he has to adjust whatever he's got to adjust. But the 102,000 is not added into that 550,000 because that's above and beyond the 3%. But the 140,000 I did add back in because the board did agree to keep him at 20%.
How many more swings at this thing do we have, Dennis?
1 week. You got next Tuesday and we're done. Now when I say swings at it, after Tuesday I got to publish it to the publishers. I pretty much got all made up. It depends what we do today, so I make adjustments. But after Tuesday, whatever we publish, we can't go higher, but we can go lower.
But we could revisit portions of this potentially in a week.
Next week, yes.
The only challenge with that is I'm operating under the approval of my Board of Health. as far as reductions. I mean, the parameters within that is there, you know, that's some of the negotiation in time that I don't know where that fits.
When's your next board?
March 6th. We just had it last week. That's what it was. Normally, with the Board of Health, what we're at is, our timing-wise, is we normally have our personnel costs at the beginning of November, that we're doing my Board of Health agenda approval in December, and then we're one of the earliest budgets presented, which gives us an opportunity to adjust. This year, just because of parameters, we couldn't get that to start our process until December 5th. So that's kind of what's put us behind the 8 ball of what our normal timeline is, because normally we would have presentation in January and any requested adjustments to be made at our February Board of Health meeting.
Dennis, that's why in our book you did the 3% because they hadn't met
Because
yet.
his board hadn't met,
Right.
so I just put 3% for wages, benefits, and any operating costs. There was 3% added to the allocation.
And that's how you came up with 2.579 to their
Yeah.
2.682 without the,
But after the
Health fund.
3%, they wanted another 102,000 plus the 140. That's how they came up to 2,000,008, whatever that number was, 2,000,820, 822.
I guess I'd like to see us approve obviously the health insurance costs and then inspection fees, and then come back on the other 7 requests for next week. Not saying that wouldn't be approved or would be, but I think it'd be helpful to just have another set of eyes and some data points for the positions, the revenue reduction, and the increase of supplies, just because that's consistent. I know it's a different kind of process with the Board of Health, but I feel more comfortable doing that and having some more data to rely on. Otherwise, I feel like we're just approving the positions, and we have other departments that are asking for positions as well that we may approve or deny, but I think that's more in line and fair.
And so like within the nurses is what additional data would be there except for, I mean, the STDs, the TB, the increased client and caseload responsibility that we have to have staff for to do.
I think that's exactly it. I think just showing the last year's the trend of the last 3-4 years, and here's the personnel. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing with, whether it's deputies or emergency service personnel.
Yeah, the only thing is just be cautious of going into line item reductions within this budget appropriation, because that's, the Attorney General issued a statement last September indicating that.
Yeah,
as far as
we're going to
data
increase the
segregation-
dollar amount for
What's
those.
that?
We're going to increase the dollar amount that would compensate for those line items, is
It
what
would be,
he's saying.
yeah, an allocation is what it would be, and then kind of looking down at a line item by line item is what it was, gets,
He's not saying that we're just approving
Right.
the insurance, we're improving the dollar amount for that.
yeah. So just make sure that that's clear so we don't do anything violation on that side.
So what is that dollar amount again here? So we got 9,957 times 2, basically.
And then 38
What was the 3808?
every other year inspection fee.
3808.
Yeah, every other year inspection, I mean, we have to pay those for inspect, yeah.
So which dollar amounts do you want approved today?
I would say the insurance and the inspection fees, I'd just like to take a look at the other 7 items and having some further data.
So you're talking lab supplies, custodial supplies, building maintenance, and then
Three positions and the revenue.
then the 3,001, that's the nursing.
So you are tentatively approving 3 lines.
Well, no, we'd be just around
Not
20
approving, you're approving the dollar allocation. It's up to them how they distribute it.
allocation of 24,000 more than what we were originally looking at. What were we originally budgeted at?
2,579,620.
620.
So we'd have those dollar amounts. That's up to them with the line items. But those dollar amounts, we'd add on to that, and then you discuss the rest of this next Tuesday.
So the tax askings last year, the 2.179 in our book on page 6.
That'll be 2,504,000 for the current year.
Okay, so did we use other revenue sources then on that? Is that why?
Straight taxes. They have other sources besides taxes they use for revenues.
Right.
But all we're really concerned about is what we're giving them, or allocating to them. And it's a big increase from the year before. In 18, it was a 2,179,000. This year it's 2,504,000. But we funded everything basically
And
asked for.
the 2 million,
except reserve.
the 2,000,005 doesn't include that reserve increase, does it?
No, it does not, and it does not include the 102,000.
Okay.
We were not in a position that year of needing to do an increase to replenish the health fund. And the fiscal year 17-18, that also was the tax asking that was granted that year. It was also with the understanding that some of the health fund reserve would be used
Okay.
to fill that was not funded by the tax asking.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where we were at. And then last year would have been the year that it went to full tax asking with no reliance upon the health
Okay.
fund.
That's it. That's exactly what I was
Yeah,
wondering.
and
where
those
the-
pieces were done just to try to minimize that balance in the health fund to assure that we were as close to that 20% as we could get.
Sure.
And I guess you could approve the 140,000 too. At least get part of it approved.
Yeah, I'd make the motion to do so.
So put their budget request to 2.743620.
140,000 on a 2,579,
Well, plus another
plus the three,
24,000 approximately. It's
I can add them up,
23,377.
whatever it adds up to.
We can just round it up to 24,000.
Okay, 24,000. That's in addition to the 550 we got to cut somewhere.
So I got 2,743,000.
Repeat that one more time.
Was that your motion, Mr. Taylor?
It is.
Second?
All right, motion by Taylor, second by DeWitt. Any further discussion?
I don't know, if you have questions, I can answer. I know I sent you some comparisons. That's what you'd asked me to do. We emailed them for jails, population size, and correctional officers, and then deputies. And I think we picked 5 counties, so you should have that. But if you have questions, I'm here to answer whatever you may have.
Go ahead. Oh, there you go.
Or I can explain it in better depth, whatever you would like me to do.
I mean, if you just explain the need for the general public.
Sure.
More deputies, if you.
Yeah, so what's happened over the years, our call volume has increased. We're up to 16,000 calls. We have 846 square miles basically, and we've been operating a long time with having few deputies working patrol. We have a number of papers that have to be served as far as mental and substance abuse papers that bring our deputies back into town to serve those at varying hours. So we're pulling people out from patrol to come in and serve quite a few papers in this area. The judges, these are court orders and they can't be delayed. They need to be done in a timely manner. So basically what we have is 39 deputies and myself. If you want to break it down for how we operate, the sheriff, 2 majors. We have 28 patrol, 28 people work patrol, 2 of them are lieutenants, 6 are sergeants, and 20 deputies. The lieutenants have a number of collateral duties, such as our policy manual, training, internal affairs, part of a SWAT oversight, canine oversight, reserve program, which we've built that up to right now, as soon as we graduate this class, to about 27, so we're happy with that. We have 4 that work in investigations. and they do identification evidence. We have one of those persons assigned to the drug task force. We have 4 people assigned full-time to civil, mental, and substance abuse with a lieutenant and 3 deputies. That lieutenant has varying duties as well as courthouse security, oversight, community policing. And we have 1 person that is in community policing role / DARE, school resource, and also does civil, mental, and substance abuse. So we're very stretched. In 2018, we had 16,600 calls. We patrol a number of the smaller communities. We were involved in community policing. We think that's a very important concept for the sheriff's office. It reflects positively with the community, good public relations. Our civil division recently served a number of papers, around 11,000 papers. 8 or 11,000 were attempted and successfully served 5,600. We processed 385 mental and substance papers, and oftentimes doing this with just a couple deputies that were on the road, because some of these things happen after the hours of the 8 to 4 Monday through Friday group. So kind of an oversight of where we're at the sheriff's office and the added demands that are placed on us. That doesn't even count the jail. Our jail books more people than a lot of counties that are bigger than us. Recently, since right after Christmas, we've been running at capacity. And we have set a minimum staffing because we believe that's a safety issue, that's a liability issue, and we believe that you have to have that. So our jail staff is dealing with a variety of things that probably didn't deal with 20 years ago, such as a mental health issue that constantly is still that we deal with, people that end up in our jail with mental health issues until they can get placed somewhere else. So our resources are stretched. Overtime is tough because we're short. I can't promise that we still won't have overtime, but hopefully we do, I think, a very good job as we can of regulating the amount of overtime.
Go ahead.
If it's possible to quantify how much of the strain is due to rural patrol needs versus the fact that you provide 28E services to virtually all of our rural communities.
So, and that's a good question, thanks. What would happen is, regardless if we had a 28E with them or not, we'd still be going, because they're 911 calls. That's really what we're responding to. Not, since we signed this 28E, we have not billed anyone because we haven't had anything that is something that was an issue with an ordinance, something that we could handle. We did, and it was less than an hour, just to knock on the door and say, hey, they want you to do this. People did it. The whole idea behind that was, in the smaller towns, you didn't really want the mayor or the clerk being the bad person in the town trying to enforce some of those ordinances. So we stepped up and said, hey, we'll help you out, and we'll do that. But our guys, they'll spend part of their shift in directed patrol in that community. And yes, there's no pay, but we would be doing that regardless. We did that before. The safe zone, I guess, or safety net would be that we wanted our rural communities to be in accordance with the code. And that is that they had to have some type of public safety if they were an incorporated city. So they're all incorporated cities, and they needed to have something to protect them. They couldn't afford to have 24/7 law enforcement, but if they signed a 28E agreement, we would be willing to answer the call. It's just to make sure that everything's good.
Chair, do you think that there's a perception sometimes that Sioux City's got its own PD and that all the deputies are outside of their responsibilities that you're tasked with from the code that belong in Sioux City that the PD can't do?
Right. So our guys, only the deputies can do the garnishments, the civil papers, and the mental and substance abuse papers. So, they will probably spend about 25% of their time in Sioux City doing all those emergency things that come up. And 75% of their time, they're out in the county doing those things. It's when we're pulled away that we end up shorting, having 1 or 2 deputies out when we have 2 coming in to do all those things. So, yeah, the sheriff has a complex position. He has a whole 60-some responsibilities, more than just patrol, invest, and whatever else the police department does. The sheriff has all kinds of different responsibilities. Of course, we all know it's the jail, but it's civil papers, it's mental abuse and substance abuse, it's garnishments, it's removals, writs of replevin, go to a business, take their money. I can't believe we still do that, but that's what we do, and it's in the code, and that's what has to be done. So, there's just a wide variety of things that the sheriff's office does versus a police department, a municipality. So what I got about 5 minutes, if you could take that, of a little video of sometimes the shortage that we have. If you bear with me, let me play that. He has it. That's why we have the experts.
5-minute video, 5 minutes to find it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this is an incident that you might be familiar with. 2 years ago, one of our deputies was involved in a pursuit. Subject stopped. One of the party's drivers got out and ran. 2 other subjects got in it, ran a deputy off the road. One deputy by himself down by the airport, and the result of gunfire.
First video you're going to see is a video of the attempted stop of the vehicle by Deputy Tadlock.
So that deputy is now going after the person, radioing ahead to the other deputy that the one took off. This is the other deputy's car that's going to find the one that took off. That deputy that party tries to run the deputy off the road. He's out. So he's out now. The other deputy's out chasing the other subject. This is our other deputy coming across the vehicle. This started at Port Neal, I-29, ended up behind the rest area, and now we're going to end up behind Sioux City Airport. This is the only deputy that's available now at this time. The other two are out. I got one guy. That was the whole night crew. Right. The other deputy's saying he's stuck. The other deputy doesn't have a car. He has the female in custody. That's good. That's good, Todd. So anyway, what you see there is that guy takes off after has shot several rounds at our guy. Our guy's alone. And so another car, Sergeant Bluff comes to cover, Sioux City comes to cover. I just want you to know that these guys are out there and they're doing a great job. And sometimes this is an incident, maybe not the gunfire, but a fight, and there's somebody a long ways away. This isn't a once in a great while occurrence. This is somewhat of a common occurrence anymore. Our guys are finding people with drugs and guns on them night after night. And I just find it unacceptable in today's policing that we have maybe just two guys out. We have gone to the chalkboard a number of times to try to make sure we have enough staff working, because there's a thing called, you have to count shift relief factor, because a number of years ago, the board might have held off on giving them raises, but they gave them more comp time. And you can't deny comp time. You can't deny that time off. So then we're shorthanded. We can't force people to work overtime. So then sometimes we're running with less people. So we have gone back now to 3 teams and try to have a minimum staffing of, I don't want to get into the number of working, but a minimum staffing to cover the whole county. And it's really not enough, but I didn't want at 3 in the morning a deputy to be by himself while the other one's in the ditch and the other one's chasing somebody. Or I know Matthew Road one time where they tied up got a drunk driver, and he realized how long that takes, and there's a guy out on his own. It's not acceptable. And I know that it may cost a little bit every now and then, but I'm just here to tell you, my guys work their tail off, and they need to have an extra body every year for the next 3 years. And that's what I'm here to ask. One body every year for the next 3 years. Can we work a plan out to try to get to that point I've been here ever since I started asking for more manpower, and we just haven't. And I'm just hoping that there's a time that we can get there and work on something. If there was a way that I could generate revenue to do that, I would. But unfortunately, I'm not in the revenue generating business. We serve those civil papers, those dollars come back to the general fund. I mean, there's only so much I can do. I'm willing to stand on the corner and get quarters from people so I can get more guys, if that's what it takes. Because these people really deserve to have more than what we have out there. It might be better to have Marty out there because he might get more than me.
Borrow my cane.
So what I'm here to ask is that you would consider this is important. Just last night, I'm reffing basketball at Sloan. I get done, and the guy who owns the car wash comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I want you to know your guys did a great job. I own that car wash, and they got a couple of pounds of meth out of there, and we think your guys do a great job." And I said, "No, you helped us because you had video camera in there." So I said it's a team effort, and I know the citizens really appreciate the fact that we're in these little communities, and it's a benefit for them, and it's a benefit for all of us because our ultimate goal is to keep everybody safe. That's the job of the sheriff, and your job is a tough job, but it's to help fund so we have the number of bodies that are able to keep our community safe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'll make some comments if that's all right.
Go ahead.
As far as the position, I think it's been 5 budgets that we've heard a need for an increase. And so my own, and I probably put this a little bit in the back of the materials, but the data is kind of hard because if you take out the police departments out of other counties too, then it looks like in some instances we're light. Lynn County doubles our population that has 3 times the deputies. So in Johnson trends toward that same direction. So data can be difficult, but I also trust the sheriff's recommendation after 5 years. And so for this year, just my own personal opinion is to support one. I don't know what years 2 and 3 look like, or if there's a way to talk to some of the communities too at the 28, but we're only looking at this year for right now.
Right.
So my own personal opinion would be to fund one from rural basic, and then as far as the correctional officer, and if we're talking that, and the sheriff sounds willing to help out with some room and board revenue.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what it should go for.
Yeah, then that's kind of where I'm at, and I don't know how everybody else will.
Dave, I know you would hate to answer this, but is it safe to say the patrol is of greater need?
They're both very, very important. I really can't distinguish one from the other because the jail is equally as busy as the patrol has distance. And though the jail is a controlled environment and we can, we don't have to drive 100 miles an hour and we're dealing with somebody with a gun, but they both have their own issues. If I could get 1 and 1 this year and we look at something the following year, and if I can't get 1 there and 1 there, maybe we could, just as long as I can see that we're working towards that. But to answer your question, Matthew, it's so hard to say that one is more important than the other because our correctional officers in our jail, we book, I think it's...
We average 19 bookings a day, 19 releases a day.
19 bookings a day, 19 releases, and that's more than a lot of big cities, bigger than Sioux City. I mean, that's
more than Blackhawk and Johnson.
Yeah. So, and what is, and those aren't small issues. We have worked well with the police department. They've been very helpful to cite and release some that, instead of tying up the jail, we don't get a lot of maybe the minor stuff that you used to. So people that were housed in a day in our jail are people that belong in our jail. And for our patrol guys, it's just difficult. As you could see in that video, somebody could be in Sloan and there could be a disturbance in Correctionville. There is no good way to get there in that distance other than you're going to drive hard. And sometimes we all know if you drive hard, bad things could happen, you know. And no one wants to have anybody get killed in this job.
In the last couple of years, have you shifted staff from one division to another based on where were those shifts done?
Right, so what we did was we've actually put more out on the road and said, okay, because like I said, when this incident happened, we kind of went back to chalkboard and looking at things, and then we went back again, but we put more people out and said, okay, you're going to have to come in and do some of this stuff too. You know, we try to be a little bit, so we're departmentalized inside the sheriff's office, so we had a bigger civil division. But then we thought, you know, after a certain hour in the morning, then we're short here. Well, you know what? Then, okay, more responsibility for you to come in and serve some of these papers so we're not leaving patrol short late, early morning hours. So we have, you know, done everything we can to try to make sure that we have adequate coverage, but we just run up short all the time.
And the biggest problem is you can't tell when you're going to need them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can't say at 3 in the morning we're going to slow down, because we get more calls lately than I ever imagined at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. And it doesn't matter when, you know, you could say, well, it's in the town of Lawton or it's in the town of Mobile, and those are towns, well, they don't have police. So we got to go regardless.
Personally, I'm probably not going to support the addition on the deputy. You know, I'm one to hold the line on, you know, where we're at staffing wise. You know, I'm fully in favor of looking at referendums towards growing the operations in the future on that, but I think you got your 3 votes anyway, so I mean.
I do, so I'm not going to
Yeah,
get into what I think about that, so.
that's fine.
Yep.
So I get a chance to say why I will support it?
I would appreciate it.
The numbers, yeah, and numbers, you can do whatever you want with numbers, I don't care. Even when you compare counties, I know Lynn County deputies are jailers.
Absolutely.
You know, so that skews things. But to me, the biggest problem is it's not getting any safer out there.
Right.
Not only are the calls going up, but the type of calls are getting worse and worse. That's the society that we live in. And I don't want to see anybody hurt out there, citizen or deputy.
Right, thank you. I agree 100%.
And please don't mistake that just because I don't support adding a position doesn't mean I dislike what anybody does or don't think anyone does their job or I don't approve of it, because that's not the case. I absolutely love and respect what these men do. So
I think that was
I just know that
good on your part to say that.
Yeah, I want to make it publicly known that, because I've been in public service now, like this is almost my 10th year here, and I know I've been called everything. So,
well, and it's, like I said, I don't want to get into it, but there is a time that you got to recognize that maybe, and this is a hard word for you, but maybe you're going to have to raise the taxes to do something, because I got to be honest with you, and all the people that I ran into after my guy got shot, nobody said to me, man, I sure hope you don't ask for more guys because they might raise my taxes. You know what they said? You ain't got enough bodies out there. So that's just,
right.
I respect your position. I might not agree with it. Okay.
Sure. And I'm just saying, I never campaigned on adding more staff throughout the county, and that's.
Well, okay. I'm not going to go
That's-
there.
I'm
My
just
wife has
saying,
asked me to be
that's
civil,
fine.
and I will be civil.
If
my wife.
If you can make enough revenue collecting quarters on the corner, though,
Well, I'm gonna, you know, they have lemonade stands. I'm gonna do something.
since your revenue sources are pretty limited, that's not a bad thing to look at.
Trying.
Is there support on the board, as Jeremy mentioned, to look at the 2080 agreements? as a source of revenue?
You know what, I think that really when you have your town hall meetings, if you have one big one, I think it's something that should be open for discussion down the road. And I think what we could do would meet with the mayors and come up with a fair amount if that's something that we could do down the road. I had promised them that I wouldn't, so that is totally up to you. And I think I could share with them. I think they see the value now, though.
Sure.
I really do. And I've talked to a couple mayors, and I've always said they have some set aside just in case that day came. And I don't think you'd need to, ask what they were paying before for some. I think you could do it by call, which isn't that much. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I think a good dialogue would maybe be with the communities as a board and the mayors and go with it, because in all honesty, they couldn't get it any cheaper and better than having the sheriff's office do it. Because, I would imagine if, let's say, Correctionville at one time, they probably paid $175,000. At the time, a squad car, officer, health insurance, and all those things, maybe $150,000. Wow, we wouldn't even get near that. I think you'd use the size of the community, and you figure a few thousand added on to that. I don't think you'd be looking at a whole lot of money. I think you'd have enough to pay for a deputy.
That's right. And if the board does consider that to take some of the burden off you, it really wasn't your thing to promise.
Right, yeah, absolutely. That's an agreement that you and the communities would enter with. Thank you.
But I'm just asking the board, is there a third person willing to look at that?
I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the municipalities to contribute. I mean, like Sheriff said, they're getting a lot of service for nothing right now, and I'd rather get a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing.
Right.
I think it's realistic.
And
to
I
ask
think,
for
like I
help.
said, I think we have really worked out a good relationship with them, and I think it might be something that they would entertain. I'm positive that it wouldn't be, if you got 10 towns, probably Sergeant Bluff would have no need to enter in it. They have 24/7 law enforcement. Other than Sioux City Policeman, Sergeant Bluff, they'd all be wise to have it. And I think they've seen how well it works. And if it just costs them a little bit of money, I think that most communities would be willing to do it.
Here's a thought to Matthew's point, I think it's a good one to bring up is, you have your sights set, obviously, on not just one and done.
Right.
But if we funded that from, let's say, rural basic, where the need may be most salient, and then maybe in the next year to say this is what it's going to cost to bring on, if we're going to bring on another deputy, this is where we're looking for some of those rural communities to participate. And that may be a bridge to that second person beyond this year, because I don't know right now that we have the means and mechanism to really get out and really feel the pulse with the impending budget. So for that next step, I would be supportive of that, along with looking at things like appetite for a gravel revenue increase in terms of, I think there's some things that we could do in town hall meetings over the next 6 months to lay the groundwork. I think it'd be hard to do right now.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do this week, but the 28E schedule doesn't necessarily have to match the budget year, as far as how we can start to work on considering that. The pulse is going to be, they love what you do, they prefer not to pay,
Right.
but if you asked them to pay just like you're asking us to pay, you'd have the votes with the city councils.
I would hope so. I would think so.
I think the board needs to make a decision to pursue that. Other counties, other of our neighboring counties do it on a per capita basis,
Yep.
and it's worked out. It's, you get what you pay for. They realize that.
Right.
And
Otherwise,
whether it's a funding for next year or to help later on this year,
right.
I think, Mr. Chair, that we should look into drawing
Because
up those agreements.
the smaller towns that we all know is a kind of a training ground to go somewhere else, So if Sloan had a police officer, he might have been there a year and a half, and he was gone. So they were constantly paying somebody to go to the academy at $8,000 or $9,000, and then while he's gone, they're still paying all this salary, and so, yeah,
But really, we're in an excellent position to take that step because we don't have a patchwork of different towns that take it or don't take it. It's pretty uniform.
Right.
And it's pretty easy to divide up on a per capita basis what's fair. So
I'm just going to end with this. So Dennis and I had been talking in rural basic and general, uniform, general basic. And so our deputies are 75% at least of their time in the rural area and 25% probably coming into town with the committals, mental and substance abuse and whatever else comes up. So I checked with the sheriff in Blackhawk, and that's how they do their, they put 75% of their dollars in rural basic and 25% in the.
What's your recommendation?
On both?
No, on the one.
On the deputy. I would recommend or suggest we do the one deputy on rural basic for the fact that I think we have 11 on general basic now, and on rural basic we have 9, so I'd use rural basic. And the reason there is their tax increase is around $240,000 now. They have 350 of that is actually secondary roads that we have no choice on. So if we put one deputy out there, I think it's around 88,000. It balances it out a little bit.
I concur with that, but also want to see on the second position, does it or does it not make sense? If that's the will of the board to fund that out of general basic, because last time I checked, the jail benefits everybody.
Yes, yes.
Okay, on the jail position, we talked about that too, where potentially he agreed or offered to fund 60% of the jail there, but you can change that and pay it all out of there because.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Okay.
I'm suggesting the portion that's not paid for by that revenue be funded from general basic because everybody benefits from the jail. And not, you don't say, well, it's just the rural people and unincorporated.
It's everybody, plus everybody outside of Woodbury County. But yeah,
Most of our customers are right here. I'd say 80%.
right in
Somebody
Sioux
in the
City.
rural area that lets us do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So just to kick things off with the motion, because I know we have a lot of other stuff, I would move to fund one position from the deputy position from rural basic and the portion of the correctional officer that's not covered by revenue from general basic.
Second.
that in one motion.
And that would be, like I said, I'm in total agreement to have part of that 60/40 help pay for the correctional officer.
The thing of the 60-40 split has got to be remembered that 60% has to be there every year.
Oh, it'll be there.
So just so everybody knows that we don't say, we can't do this anymore, it goes back to taxes, but he'll have the money there.
Yeah.
It's a business that isn't going to slow down a whole lot.
No, it'll be there.
But actually in the budgets, you do have in there right now 3 deputies, so it'll really be, I don't know, Pat, do they have to deny 2 deputies and allow 1? Because in the budget now, there's 3 deputies plugged in as an improvement request. They're going to allow 1 and then deny 2.
All right.
I think they officially have to deny the 2 with further talk.
But I came and asked for 1 or 1 afterwards. But yeah, I mean, I know.
In the budget, I had 3.
I got it.
Oh, because what we originally received.
Right, I understand.
Separate motion, so
Yeah, we kind of,
deputies, you have
we're not even down there.
to deny 2 deputies and then
If you want to give me what you.
So why don't we just right now, we can move to remove the 2 deputies and then go on to your recommendations later. All right.
Where are we at here?
Back to square one here on the motion.
Well, I had 3 and 1 I requested. And
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out because you have a motion out there, right?
But we don't have a second yet, do we?
Seconded
You
it.
do not?
Oh, you did? Or
Yeah.
not?
Maybe you didn't hear me, but
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Okay.
Well, you can just send your motion.
If you want to go with 3, though.
I wouldn't push it real
You can
hard.
do it the way that you have it now, and then you can clean it up here.
Try.
So what was your motion?
Motion was to fund 1 deputy from rural basic and the remaining portion of the correctional officer not covered by revenue from general basic.
I have that.
So then, The clarification is to remove the other two.
You can do that afterwards. Do
Okay.
this one first.
All right, any other discussion on this? Motion by Taylor, second by Potabom. All right, we'll do a roll call, and it'll be a split vote.
DeWitt?
Aye.
Potabom?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Ung?
Aye.
Raddick?
No. All right, thank you. And
thank you.
Do we want to do that second motion here? Okay, a motion to remove 2 of the originally budgeted improvement request, deputies out.
Second.
A motion by Raddick, second by Young. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
I have just a second of your time.
Sure thing.
I want to first thank you for what you just did. I'm sure these guys are very thankful too that we're here today. Second thing I'd like to do is remind you that tonight also on Discovery ID channel, if you haven't seen the story going around, another one of our pursuits will air on a national television show called Body Cam. And Deputy Tyler Milton and Major Wingert were involved in that pursuit. And that'll be on tonight at 9 o'clock, Discovery ID Body Cam television show. And after the meeting tonight, Major Wingert will be in the back of the room signing autographs.
That's one known as the sewage lagoon.
Thank you. All right, moving on to emergency services.
We'd originally put in 2 improvement requests during the budgeting process. The first one is to upgrade our clerk 2 to a clerk 3. That clerk 2 position has grown significantly in its duties and responsibilities, especially since now we're taking on more EMS responsibility. It's upticked a lot the amount of work that's going on internally in the office, and Donna also works as our compliance officer to make sure that we're in compliance with all the rules and regs of the State Bureau of EMS. The job description has been rewritten. Her position has been changed from wage plan to union, and it's my understanding, Melissa, that the job description is been forwarded over to the union for consideration as to where it should be.
Yes, the one that you two wrote, the job description hasn't been written by me. I just want you guys to understand that. And the union is looking at it and looking at the jobs and the requirements and what it takes to do the duties. So.
Melissa, could you step up there and explain that to folks?
As I mentioned, the union is right now looking at the job description that they submitted and to break down the job duties and to decide what the requirements are to do those duties. So right now it's not been decided if that position, not Dawn, if that position should be a 2 or just let you guys know where that's at.
And we compared Dawn's job description to a position within secondary roads, it's a clerk 3, a position within the sheriff's office, that's a clerk 3, and a position within human resources as well as zoning. And we really feel like her job duties are in line from an administrative perspective, similar to what those clerk 3s are. So it's a fiscal impact of about $7,398 to move her from clerk 2 to clerk 3. We had that, we were working on that, and then when the Siouxland paramedics issue came up, we set it aside because there was more urgent need to work on the paramedic issue, and I wanted to bring it back and work on it because I've identified it quite some time ago as probably an underpaid or undercompensated position. The other improvement request is last year when we were doing the budgeting process, when we started down after Siouxland paramedics announced they were no longer going to respond to 911 calls, we had requested 2 3/4 paramedics to help fill that void. The board authorized 2 paramedics last year in addition to the one that we already had on staff, and we were asking for an additional 3/4 time to balance out so these guys have days off, they have sick leave, they have build up comp time. We also have a need to be able to get them into training, different training courses and stuff, so we would have somebody to cover when they're not in on their shift. we agreed to take a quarter-time EMT position that we had. That employee was ready to resign and agreed to resign so we could turn that EMT position into a quarter-time paramedic position. And we really felt that has gotten us well through the first year, even though we've had some people off with injuries. But now that these 3 employees are coming into they're starting to earn vacation time and sick leave, and they'll have comp time. Our goal is to have a paramedic at the side of every patient that needs one 95% of the time, and we've been able to do that, even with one of our paramedics off on the injured list, because we've been able to bring in that quarter-time person, and he's actually picking up some of the hours for the employee that's off that didn't have any sick time coming. So we really would like to stay at that 95%. We have multiple saves under our belts already with this program. I mean, it's almost weekly, and we've got a really good software program, and when we look at, we're trying to find voids in the day that would make sense, not if we had to run short, when would that be? And there is no consistency. There's nothing that says, hey, 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning's downtime. Some nights, that's our busiest time. We may have 2 or 3 calls during the daytime, and then we're running all night long. The guys get no sleep at all. Last Friday, I think we ran 9 calls, and 4 of them were after 9 o'clock at night. We get as high as 12 and 13 calls on a shift, and we've got a good system set up with the volunteers. With the paramedic is needed, they go in. If the EMT is needed to support the operation, we send the EMT in. The paramedic stays with the squad and becomes available for the next call. We run a lot of back-to-back calls. So we'd like to go all the way to 3/4 time. We understand the budget constraints. I think I might know of a couple of paramedics that are moving towards the end of their career. They're looking for something to still keep their skills up and work. So we would like to try having quarter-time paramedics instead of 1 3/4 time. We'd like to get to the point where we have 3/4 times. That saves us the life insurance and or health insurance benefits. We'd like to try that and see if that would work. But the system we put together is, I think it's amazing. We're running the second busiest 911 EMS service in the county and the second busiest fire department, and we are busy.
Where do we land with the training for the EMTs that weren't we going to make them into paramedics?
Yeah, I've done the numbers, and I can give that to you. It's about $16,000 to take them from EMT to the advanced EMT. But the system we have with a paramedic EMT together is very good. They support each other well. We have one advanced EMT that we have found he's rarely even using his skill sets. However, we're in the process right now with the Bureau of EMS, the regulatory agency over us, and they're making some changes in what's called scope of practice, what each level of EMS can perform. And we're excited to see some of the changes in the scope of practice that are coming up, because they're going to add some tools to the EMTs that they never had before without going to the advanced. So we're going to get several of those patient care opportunities with the scope of practice change, we think, without having to put them through the advanced class and spend that kind of money. The advanced, we'd get them in a class if they had one, but Western Iowa Tech's not even offering the advanced class online. The pass failure rate on that national registry test is horrific. It's at best 35%, and in Iowa, I think it's been running between 20 and 25%. The test that's written by the national registry doesn't equal to the content of the course that's being taught.
What's the pay difference between an EMT and a paramedic right now in Woodbury County?
I don't have it with me. I don't think I can get it for you.
I mean, would it be worth it to, instead of add paramedics, to keep the EMTs we got, go ahead and pay them and pay for the training and get them there?
Well, what we'd be doing is taking the EMTs we've got and moving them to an advanced, or we could take them all the way to paramedic. The problem with that is the guys that we would need to do that with are coming up on the end of their career. We're going to make a huge investment in them, and they're 4 or 5 years out from, it's 2 years to get them through, get them trained, get them through the clinicals, 1.5 to 2 years to get them trained, and these guys are, all of them are approaching 60 or above, and they're looking at the door rather than, they're seriously looking at the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to probably trade out some of those EMTs, where it will give us the opportunity to then look at paramedics that also have the skill sets that we need for the fire and the rescues. If we can hire good paramedics that have tactical capabilities, we can train them on the fire and the rescue component. That's training that's available, they can do most of the time right on their shift. Matter of fact, we're trying to pull together an advanced or a firefighter 1 course right now in Woodbury County. And we think we have enough people, and I've got 4, maybe 5 of my guys that are going to go through it. There's been some changes in that certification over the years and some stuff added. So some of them have got the original firefighter 1. We want them to go through and get the upgraded version of the firefighter 1 course.
What would that gain us? We don't have a fire department.
We do. We actually, that truck that's on the capital improvements budget goes to fire, and
Okay, but we don't, okay, so you're responding to what kind of fires then?
we respond to every fire in Woodbury County. Combine fires, structure fires, grass fires. We have 2 grass rigs. Well, we have 1 grass rig and 1 mini pumper. It's not unusual right around Climbing Hill for our guys to get there and stop a small fire from getting a lot bigger. Got a couple of houses that were started out as grass fires, got into the house, and we were close enough. We were able to get there and put water on it and knock it down before it became a full-blown house fire. 2 of them right in the town of the unincorporated limits of Climbing Hill, right across the street and down a block. We have the mini pumper that was donated to us by CF Industries that reached its end of its life for them, and then we have another unit that we've got as a grass rig. The daytime help is really tough. The other night at Correctionville, I think we had 8 fire departments plus us and the sheriff's department at that building fire to get enough manpower and equipment to even work. Normally, even in the daytime now, we're dispatching 2 and 3 fire departments to almost any fire, just to get enough manpower during the daytime. We've got calls during the day where we're having trouble mustering EMS people to get the ambulance out of the station. So it's not a pretty situation. But the fortunate part is we're all playing nice together and we're making it work. I mean, it's a matter of I think the improvement request on the clerk 2 to clerk 3, we really need to hold off until we see what the union says about that. Because if the union doesn't feel like it's justified to go to a clerk 3, then that's, to me, it's.
And even if the union decides, yes, it could be a clerk 3, it's still ultimately, obviously, your decision whether to provide that funding, so.
Say, Melissa, on that, have we compared from other departments the similar clerk 2 and clerk 3s?
That's what we're doing right now. We're
Okay.
comparing those duties to actually another department and their clerk 3.
That's what I'd like to see.
That's here in the column as well, so.
Like I said, we've been working on this for a long time, and when we brought it forward before to staff, they told us, well, you don't have the money in your budget to make or go from clerk 2 to clerk 3. You have to put it in as an improvement request to the board. Well, I brought it as an improvement request, and then I found out I had to go back to the union first because she is union eligible, for the union to look at the job description and make their determination. So, we're in the middle of the budget time. I would have done all of that had I known those steps were required.
So I talked to you earlier, Gary, and I'll be the bad guy maybe on this one, but I think we may be able to get there this year. I mean, looking at everything, and I know just from the sheriff's office, because after 5 years, I felt like moved the ball down the field and maybe got up in the red zone last year. But my judgment should be to hold off right now, just because we're still at such a gap. So I'm sorry, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the numbers on the quarter time paramedics, everybody knows, is $11,217. $11,000. Probably be a little bit more than that because the raise the board has put into effect for the 1st of July. But and I appreciate the sheriff. I'm standing down last year on his request for personnel and making room for my request to get a full hearing, and that's why we didn't come back this year with a 3/4 request. We just wanted to go to a quarter at a time and see if we could get where we wanted to be. It's just a matter of the less bodies I have, the less percentage of the time we're going to have covered. questions?
I mean, personally, I was ready to take it out a month ago when we talked about it, so, I mean, I don't know where anyone else sits, so that's up to you guys here. I mean,
So I'll just follow up there. I'd make a motion to deny with the understanding that, you know, as we have increased revenues and trying to meet that gap, that's,
so your motion to remove these improvement requests, and I'll second that. Sorry. All right, any other discussion, any other opinions that want to be? No questions? All right, so motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Do we need a roll call, or is it? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed?
Yes.
Okay. That passes 4-1. And moving on to WCICC.
You can ask John whatever you want, but basically the city has denied the RIC improvements. And otherwise, that's where we're at. The reduction would be 51,023 off his current, what's in the budget now.
So we should send the city a thank you card as far as making the decision, and John a sympathy card.
It is what it is, so.
Yeah.
I thank the board for deferring it in the initial.
I'll move to remove the improvement request for
Second.
motion by Radig, second by Young. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
They were the ones that told you to put it in there.
Well, that's only fitting. They'd be the one to ask to have removed. So moving on to Comm Center.
Comm Center, in this case, I told Lynn there was no need for him to come because the city council is going to make a decision on his improvement request next Monday. So this is something we can take up next Tuesday.
what's the amount?
Around 17,000 be a reduction.
Not reflected that.
I had question marks there because until they decide, it's in his budget now, taken out if the board approves it next Tuesday, depending on what the council. This is a bad deal when you got two entities going back because one approves it. the other
It's a
may
good
not.
deal and it's a bad deal.
Huh?
It's good and bad.
Yes, it is.
It's good because it's only 17,000 then if it passes.
Request defer this till next Tuesday.
Yeah, just move to defer.
Second. So motion by Taylor, second by Radig to defer. Any other discussion or questions?
How is that process going to be? Would we accept the number and that's all we can affect, or?
Right.
No, we can still deny it.
Well, you have to deny it on your side.
Okay.
The improvement request, yes. There'll have to be a vote here. They'll deny their half, we got to deny our share. Yep.
Any prognostications?
It's about 50-50 over there right now, from what I'm hearing from my counterpart over there. That's why it delayed till the last minute.
I got
149 or?
Chances are you probably won't get it, but it's hard telling.
50-50 would be 2.5 to 2.5. I don't think that can happen.
They got to get a thesaurus to come out with better big words like that. All right. I guess all those in favor of deferring, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Deferred. Passes 5-0. 2020 CIP. Dennis, you taking this?
Yeah, on this one here, he originally had $1,147,000 there. We did reduce the 250 out of it that we put in there for contingency in case something came up next year. And then we took another 250 off. Then we had to add on 157,000 for computer replacement that we do every 5 years. So we're going to be at the same tax rate that we had proposed, at 17 cents per thousand. We'll be able to accomplish all this. and still have reserves left, which we'll be talking about here shortly. So you can kind of look through what he's got. He doesn't have a whole lot of improvements there. We've incorporated all the improvements from other departments. And if you want, you go, piece by piece here. I kind of listed them in page 1, list all the ones that are there. Now, there is a couple there you may have a question about. Tom probably left, but they had one for a data center remodel, $50,000. That's the pad where everything sits in this room. That needs to be redone, and the city feels that's our cost because our building, that's how they figured it. So that's why the 50,000's in there.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay?
So it's physically here, but
Yep.
it's utilization and its benefit.
To them. Correct. They use 50%, basically 43, we're 43% and they're 57%. But in their mind, and I think John could convey the same thing, that they feel it's our structure. If they pull out, we keep it. It doesn't, 57% doesn't go with them. That's kind of their logic.
Under what circumstance would they pull out?
Never. Never's a long time, but I don't ever see it splitting up. It's too big and too costly to split it up. But you got the radios, huh?
Let's just keep talking about that for a second.
Okay.
If that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So the equipment that's going in there, that would be split.
Split, yep, that's 150,000 for each entity every year.
So do we know what's in the data center remodel?
Data center remodel, the way I understand it, is when you go up there, they have a room that's, I think, the last end you step up into. It's not accessible, handicap accessible, things like that, and it needs to be brought down, I guess, from what I understand. It's gonna cost about 50,000 to do it, and that's an estimate. All these are estimates. But we can convey and come back next week on that item there and see if the city's willing to split it. 5743.
I think this is just a thought. One of the things that scares me about this is if we just say, all those in favor say aye on this one, it's over $1 million. And it'd be easy to do. I think we should identify some of these that we say, well, let's take another look or get some more information on this one or that one. Otherwise, it's just kind of a wholesale, that's a lot of money in one motion.
Oh, yeah, it is. There's some other items in there. I think Dan's here, possibly. Behind me. In this, there is a new road out there. That's a big ticket, $475,000. And we did do a road out out to Nature Centers, $300,000, but they agreed to pay back over 10 years. We borrowed the money. They paid the principal and interest through revenues out of Conservation Reserve to pay for that $300,000. The board has a choice here. Do you want to fund it through taxation, or do you want to go back to the board said, if you want this road, you pay through it over 10 years, just like you did the Nature Center road going up there, that blacktop, that you paid for over 10 years, and we borrow the money and get the lowest interest we can, and they pay back in 10 years.
Is everything on this page on a 10-year schedule?
Most of them are on 5 years.
Which
The dollar amount's small enough, the total amount, but the thing about CIP here, you're approving a CIP for next year that could change almost weekly or monthly because we don't borrow the money till the following May of 2020. So a lot of changes can happen. Even though you approve this, they still got to come before the board with their public hearings, bid lettings, all that, for the board to approve it. Even though it's here, it doesn't automatically mean you were going to approve it.
Well, what effect does it have on FY20 taxes?
None. Because you're borrowing the money in May, it'll affect the 2021 taxes a year away.
We already go through FY19 CIP?
Yes.
Okay.
We have that. That's already figured out for next year's taxes.
So these are, lack of a better term, placeholders that we're just sort of putting out there that could potentially happen, but maybe not.
Maybe not. It's correct. Because like I say, it could change from now until, say, March 1st. When we go to borrow the money in May or April 1st, you could change all of this. So it's like a long-term plan. It's hard to do because things change so fast. And there may be other things that come up, and some of these may be pushed back. But you don't borrow for this till next May of 20, and we tax for it in 2021. So it gives you a lot of latitude here. Even though you might approve all this, doesn't mean you have to.
So I got a question maybe it's for Tony here on on the first line, well, exterior cameras for courthouse, LEC, and Trosper Hoyt, how much? Okay, that's, Todd, is that like a 33, 33, 33, or what percent split goes to the LEC?
I would have to go back and look at it. I want to say that a majority of it would be on the LEC. There would be a couple of additional cameras placed on the courthouse outside, and then a couple on Trosper Hoyt, but a majority of it would be LEC.
Okay, so you're talking maybe 2/3 of it goes to the LEC?
Correct.
Okay. If we continue taking steps towards getting a new jail, that's somewhere I don't want to spend 40 grand, so. I mean, I think we can approve that, but knowing that maybe if we go that route, this will take out of it. If that sounds fair to everyone else. Because you're talking 2020 on this,
This will be in next year's CIP plan. It's borrowed in May to pay for, start paying in 2021. So you got all year to think about it.
It's
Until
July.
they want to have a case with the road, or say Gary with a $220,000 air truck. Even though it's in here, it doesn't mean they can go out and buy right away. They still got to come to this board and have it approved.
And that process is clear to everyone?
If it isn't, I will make it very clear.
I think that's important, because the idea of, well, you approved it back then, and now it feels like, why did you all vote for it? I just want to make.
Well, it's just harder to vote against it once you already voted to pay for it, essentially.
Well, then maybe you don't even want to approve the CIP budget. Because then if that's what you're thinking, you're approving everything in here with no recourse.
No, I'm not thinking that. It's just people make that
I
argument.
just want to make sure that the thinking is just because we approved it, they all go out and do it. Somehow we got conveyed that CIP is still subject to board approval during that fiscal year.
I don't know if we had that confusion for the FY19
I didn't think so.
that we just approved,
Right,
so
right.
it has to be on the schedule either way, because we have to, as you said, levy.
Right. And this money here, we don't levy for till 2021. So we borrow next May of 20, when we see how many of these projects we really got done.
Is this only useful for the purpose of forecasting?
Yes. Giving you a picture of
So
what
if
people
you do
want.
nothing with this page,
It
it
just
doesn't
sits.
have,
It just sits. Yeah, it just sits. Now, I do put in the budget to give you spending authority up to that amount, but doesn't mean you have to spend it. Or we'd have to do a budget amendment down the road, say in April or March.
so if that's the case, I just move it, because it's something that we're gonna have to look at and I don't think we really have time to go through each one of these right now and talk about an air truck or a road.
No. It makes it clear to the people, they just can't go out, rush out and buy one. They still got to come to this board.
It hasn't happened for 4 years of doing it this way, so. Were you bidding on one right now?
Yeah, on eBay.
I'll second.
Motion by Taylor, second by Young. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pass, anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. D, proposals for new revenue and budget reductions in order to keep the tax levy low in Woodbury County. It's got to be Jeremy's words, right?
Yeah, you can say yes. Okay, we came up with 13 different ideas here. We've actually accomplished number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8. Well, no, we haven't got to 8 yet. We'll get to that. Okay, so we're really down to number 6. This involves conservation. This is one that Keith wanted to bring back on the wrap-up, and I guess we're wrapping it up pretty much today with the final next Tuesday. But in this case here, he had $100,000 in his administration for equipment purchases. They have a 5-year plan, I believe. Dan can address that. And the suggestion there was, because we're looking for places to reduce the tax asking for this coming year. to leave the 100,000 in there, but have 50,000, instead of 100,000 taxes, 50,000 come from wherever he can find 50,000 from, whether it's conservation reserve or whatever. The sheriff is still here, can I put up a voter standing with you? So I'll have to go from there, but that's a suggestion, find 50,000 revenue.
I really don't have the 50,000. That's why we put in there the 100,000 for our equipment. I know 2 years ago, I was informed by Rick that you guys put a moratorium on equipment. And then last year, this last fiscal year, we were able to start getting back on track with equipment. We do have our equipment laid out through 23. We have equipment replacement plans. We run into maintenance, and it's one of those things that you worry about. I run that piece of equipment too long, there's no trade-in value. Or you blow the engine or the transmission goes out, you're done. And then you're paying full value. We're looking at 1996, 2006 vehicles, 2007 mowers, equipment that is 10, 12 years old that needs to be replaced. And the longer we put it off, I realize you guys want to keep taxes at net zero, but cost of living goes up, cost of equipment goes up, cost of repairs go up every year. It's hard to try and do with a moratorium. We hit it, and then we're going to cut it 50,000. I don't know where I can come up with 50,000 because I know he mentioned my reserve fund. We just met and spent 4.5 hours on Saturday, my board, going through long-range planning and development again. And I got 5 two-sided pages of capital improvements that we're trying to do, that we're trying to use those monies for, and have dedicated some of those monies for to try and move forward. So this is the first I heard that we were looking at this 100,000. I called Dennis when I saw the way it was worded, and found out yesterday that we were looking at that part of my budget, because I hadn't heard up until then. So.
Were you here though when I said let's bring 50,000 back at wrap up?
What's that?
Weren't you here when I said let's bring 50,000 back at wrap up? It was like a month ago. So when we did your budget, we received your proposal.
I don't recall you saying that, Keith. I'm sorry. If you did.
I did.
What would that do? So I certainly the situation that you find yourself in, what would that do as far as prioritization? I mean, are there some things that you could, within those vehicles say, this I could limp along for another year and use it? You could still use 50,000 but prioritize that?
I just have to look at maintenance records. Right now, we budget $18,000 a year for vehicle maintenance. I had my office manager run it. We're at $19,000 and something right now. We've got 4 months in our busiest season coming up with some of that equipment. That's what scares me. We try to be, we do oil changes, preventative maintenance. You got a pump, you got to making a noise. We take care of it, because if the seal goes out, you'll take out more than just that pump. So I don't know, looking at my crystal ball, can we get that to limp along? We might be able to. Do we get into the position where we lose a piece of equipment and we don't have to trade in? That's my fear.
Sure.
You start working on vehicles that are 10 or 12 years old.
Mowers. Is this not the similar kind of case, though, where we would make a $50,000 reduction, then your board comes back to decide what the actual budget is going to be, though? Like they could take $50,000 from somewhere else and still fund that.
I don't have 50. I wish if I had
right,
50,000
but
somewhere else, I would be asking you for it.
Right, land acquisition funds. There's other funds that.
I've only got one fund, and that's my reserve fund.
Sure.
I have no other funds. It's a 667.
You're using those funds, though, throughout this next year for other things, right?
For capital improvements.
Right.
Not vehicles.
Right.
I don't think you've ever used capital improvement dollars for vehicles. Can we do that?
Your board has the authorization to do that, or no?
I would, yeah, his board have the ability to do that as their separate board. I'd say, all you can do is say, we're not allowing 50,000, he has to go back and decide where he pull it from, or come up with different revenues. But we reduce 50,000 somewhere in his budget, wherever he told us to reduce it in the general basic fund, which he doesn't have a whole lot. Equipment purchase, he's the only one that I can see he could even reduce, unless he reduces employees or gas or electric utilities, things like that. So it's just getting along without 50,000, or come up with 50,000 somewhere else. But we gotta, and I feel for Dan, but we gotta go somewhere if we want a flat tax.
Mr. Chair.
That's one that
Go ahead.
you mentioned to bring back up.
This is a list within an item, so would it be okay to discuss number 11?
Let's, do we want to just hammer out one at a time, vote on each
Well,
one individually?
in my mind, it's number 11 influences a lot of these changes. That's recommended reduction in the debt service interest rates.
Well, we got Dan up here. Let's knock out this and then we'll go to that.
Well, what we do on that,
11 may influence this one.
what we do on 11 depends on
I'll
how.
gladly sit down. I've been here for a while.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you,
I'm patient.
you can wait.
Hang tight,
Okay,
Dan.
so, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Dennis, on number 11,
Okay, number 11.
I would like to see us take the $300,000 reduction.
On 11,
Yeah.
that'd take us down to 100,000.
What is the purpose of having what you and Supervisor Taylor call a reserve within a reserve when?
Okay, the reserve is too big. That's why we're taking it down. And the reserve comes about when we borrow money, anticipate borrowed money, and that comes at a lower interest rate after we set the budgets. That's happened for several years. So we have built up a reserve about 406,000. We recommend taking 100,000, but we could take another 100,000. But you always hate to bring it down to nothing. Now, the reserve is a little different in debt service, because in debt service we pay interest December 1st, and then we pay interest and principal June 1st. The reason June 1st is the principal, because by then we have all the money pretty much collected for the county. Now, there's cases where we don't collect 100%, then we have to fall back to the reserve to cover costs.
So my thought is either just a number of 200,000 or 300,000 reduction, or something close to what we did in previous years, where we tied a gaming allocation to equipment replacement. It was line item 6,000 and above, and it was around a number like that.
Okay,
Is that correct?
yeah, we did that.
Because it's
At that point in time, with
sort of a
gaming.
one-time.
Yeah, gaming could be used anywhere. Debt service, you're tied to the debt service fund.
Okay.
So what we'd have to do
Okay.
there, Matthew,
Okay,
is reduce
take
it
that
by
back.
200,
All
but
right.
then you could give his 50 back, because then we're getting back to
Yep.
4 funds.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
What happens, I mean, with interest rates rising, what happens if the reverse is the case? You're talking about past years where you've had overages because of falling interest, correct?
Okay, well, falling interest is because we always budget ahead of time in March, and we don't know what we're borrowing the money for in May at the interest rate. We always put, well, then we're up a creek.
Well,
Interest
that's
rate
my
goes up,
point,
we're up a creek.
right?
We don't want to burn it down.
Yeah, so to Supervisor Hung's point, what would be, if we were going to go up, instead of 100,000 reduction, and we're down to 12%, what would be the most aggressive that,
Well, they
I mean,
can't change
you-
our interest rates on the loans we got. They're locked in. The interest rate would change on what we're borrowing in May, payable starting next year. So
So
I
with these-
wouldn't feel bad about 200,000. 300 be pushing a little bit. But when we say 200,000, that'd be reducing our tax levy by whatever, 200,000, where we could increase in another fund to make up the difference, where we still have a flat rate.
So what is the effect of the payments coming in June?
The payments come in June. We already have the money on hand because we've levied the taxes for the current year to pay for them.
Right.
Those are locked in.
So
Yes.
we're in a safe position
Yes.
for the near future.
Yes, yes.
And over the years this has grown, it's not been,
No, because we always try to estimate a little bit higher on interest rates, so we're always getting a little extra money every time.
and we'll continue to do that.
Yep. I estimate 4% on the loan we're going to do for May's loan, that we'll start paying next year, 4%. It may come in 4, may come in 4/4, but it may come in 3. So just, I think it'll come less than 4, but I want to be careful that we don't get trapped. So we do have a safety valve with the reserve, but we definitely don't need $400,000 there.
So would you be comfortable with 200? And then maybe going to 75? And the only reason I say that is we may have just covered, theoretically, Dan, but we also have Kevin, who's going to surely come back next week and try to make a case for each one of those positions. Plus we have whatever else we're going to be having to fund. See, I'm not trying to triangulate, but try to keep a bridge somewhere. I mean, it's better than a...
If you remember, we had 2 positions on the table too that we graciously stepped back on, that we put in this year because we were told they were too tight, trying to help do that. So, and I think Kevin's, or a lot of that is grant funding, and we're just getting some of his funding for those positions, correct?
No, otherwise he wouldn't be here for, I mean,
I
as
thought
far...
you had to have that budgeting authority, to have that dollar amount, to have a grant coming.
None of the ones we discussed today.
The other side of that too is that if we're using reserves to balance operating, what happens next year? So the more we stick in it this year, the more we're going to have to make up next year, correct?
Correct. Now, we probably won't have to make up all of it because hopefully we got a valuation increase through growth.
Yeah, but we're not have that much.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think right now, as a county, we're in the position for the next 2, 3, 4 years of trying to find a bridge to...
CF.
Right. So I'd feel comfortable at 200 and then going back up to 75. I know that's not where you want to be, but it's not 50. I mean, it's a...
I appreciate that, don't get me wrong,
I just think every time we drop money off like that, we get farther behind and we never, ever get caught up. You know, this equipment isn't getting cheaper, like he says. The maintenance isn't getting cheaper. We push that money off, and next thing we know, we got to replace it wholesale, an entire piece, and we got nothing to trade in. We've seen this for decades. These past boards have done this exact thing, and here we are sitting here holding the bag for this stuff. Look at secondary roads. It's the same thing. We shut these things off, quit spending money on these things 30 plus years ago. Now we're trying to cut equipment costs. I don't like that. Sometimes you got to spend money to keep your stuff going. It wears me out to think that we're going to save money and it costs us more in the long run. Kind of tired of that.
With my own understanding of not reducing conservation's allocation by 50,000, I would move a $250,000 reduction in the debt service.
Can I just ask a question before there's a second?
Sure.
Do you feel comfortable with that?
He said not really, but go ahead. You do it all.
I'll second for discussion.
I was going to say,
I'll second for discussion. So do you feel comfortable with that as far as the trajectory of rising interest rates and everything else that is at?
Yeah, I would. Because I'm going to come back next week when we do all these, come back with where we're at right then, and then I give you a projection of what our reserves would be in debt service. Is that fair? So you're talking 250 here and leaving 100 in his.
That's right, I understood.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that sounds like a fair compromise. I think Supervisor DeWitt brings up a good point, and Supervisor Ung does as well.
And to add one more point, at least in debt service, you don't have to rebuild the reserves. Not
Right.
like other
Yes.
funds where, getting back to what Matthew's basically saying, you don't have to rebuild them. Or if we use general basic, then what do we do next year? This is something we don't have to use to rebuild.
It's nice to have it, but it's not a requirement to build it up to a certain point.
There's no 25 or 20% limit. You know, we can live on what's left.
I can just say thank you. I want to say thank you. I appreciate you working with us. I wouldn't want your job, appreciate what you do for us.
We haven't voted yet, so you might want to hold off.
Well, I have talked about it.
All right, so any further discussion on that? There was a motion by Young, second by Taylor, by the way.
What's the motion?
To
Reestablish?
reduce the debt service levy by $250,000.
Okay.
And to either take no action or eliminate the conservation item.
Leave the conservation the same. I don't think you have to take any action.
Yeah, you don't have to take any action on that, so there's,
And this, you know, this leaves the board in a position to have another 100,000.
Right.
We really need that.
Right.
And the debt service reserve doesn't right now, so.
Right.
all right, any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Any other items on here? So 1 and 2 are done.
You're down to number 7. Okay, you approved replenishing 100.
Gaming revenues.
Where does gaming leave us with that?
Gaming revenues, we are now at, if we don't spend any more money this year, except what we have obligated, we'll have 122,000 carryover, add that onto the gaming revenue funds we get, that we can still do the 300,000 plus 59,803, which would leave 100,000 still unallocated to be used at the board's discretion. That way we aren't burning this down to nothing, because I'll guarantee you between now and 17 months from now, something's going to probably come up that you want to fund. So this leaves you 100,000 there, still increases your 300 to 358,000 general basic.
I'd move 59,803.
I'll second it.
So for 17 months, that'll leave us with 100,000 unallocated.
So every time I'll kind of remind, and I do give you a report.
No, they-
Keep it on
especially
your report
17
every
months
month
out.
what you have to unallocate. And I'll remind you too, when somebody comes to here, this is what we got left, gentlemen.
Really have to pick and choose where we,
Yes, you're going to have to.
I mean, sometimes we got to say no, huh?
Sometimes. But 100,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you have somebody come in for 20, 30, 40, 50, it goes fast.
Especially 17 months out.
Yes.
Hey, just nobody have any emergencies?
And we're assuming gaming revenue stays status quo.
Right.
Looking at the revenues, they're down about 3 million on revenues, because I keep a chart here where it's 1% of the revenues. I can calculate back. Compared to the last 4 years, we're down about 3 million. Which isn't a whole lot, and hopefully it comes back.
Well, I don't, hopefully people gamble more. I don't know if I want to
You want to
support
put
that,
me, you
But if
listen.
they quit gambling, then we got a problem.
The new parking ramp will bring that in alone, huh?
Right, yes. You don't have to walk through the snow and cold.
Was there a second? No, I don't
Yeah,
second.
I think I second that, yeah. So the motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Looks like we did 8 earlier, right?
Number 8, you got to approve that where you agree with the sheriff that he needs 60%, which
I think we already moved that in the motion earlier, did we not? Yes.
You
Right.
approved doing it, but you didn't approve the dollar amount.
Yeah, I think we moved the portion that wasn't funded
Yeah.
from general basic. I'll move the sheriff's room and board fund 60% of funding of one new correctional officer.
Second. Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any further discussion?
Is that roughly 60% then?
Yes.
Just
Yes,
that
the
number will.
exact dollar amount is, I have it here, 39,893.
Okay.
So I just rounded 40,000.
So we just have an understanding that 40,000 will be.
It'll be
there.
transferred into general basic through next
Future
year to
years.
cover the costs
Okay.
of the jailer. And it'll continue onward for future years.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay.
The region,
Okay, on the region distribution here, Don's done a lot of work on this
I
budget
think we-
with Jeremy.
I'm just going to cut to the chase. I mean, we all know what's going on this, right?
So I'd move the reduction of $50,000 in county services from the anticipated additional distribution June 30th, 2019.
Second.
All right, motion by Taylor, second by Ung. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We got DHS here.
Okay, on this one, it's $80,000. That's an estimate from our building services because state auditor's office says that we can use our people up there as part of the reimbursement cost. He's tried to contact DHS. He is Kenny, and they have not returned his call, but state auditor's office says it should be used to, as part of our DHS reimbursement costs. So he estimated to be around $80,000. So we're going to go ahead and use $80,000. The catch-22 is if it doesn't come to fruit, 80,000 or 50 or 40, whatever it is, then we'd have to go back to reserves or hope other revenues to increase above what we estimated. So it's 80,000.
This is a guesstimate.
Yeah, I'd move it with requesting a report back in the next week or so to see that we're not counting our chickens.
Yep.
You
Okay.
know the saying.
Second.
All right, motion by Taylor, second by Young. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. So 11's done. 12.
12 is motor vehicle fees. I went back through and estimated what they're going to get by taking 7 months so far, divide that out times 12. It comes to 20,000 more than what we had in the budget. I talked to Mike. He didn't have any problem with adding 20,000 revenue.
I'd move it.
Second. Motion by Taylor, second by Radig. Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, juvenile detention, our last one, and that hit estimate 450,000 revenue. That covers our state grant plus all the other care and keep we take for kids coming into the facility that's not ours. I talked to him a little bit, and again, this is a little bit of a guess, but we are getting a new contract with the Native Americans, one of these groups out there. Also, he's collected almost 500,000 this year, so we want to raise that 50,000. Yes, it's a little bit of speculation, and yet it is.
What is it? What is it compared to in the past? You said it's
Yes.
right on target?
Yep.
All right, I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Taylor. Any further discussion on this item? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, moving on to further budget reviews final.
That's all of this.
All right, that was that?
Yes.
That was D. Okay, I guess that's D and E combined, huh?
D and E combined.
All right.
Yeah, for further reviews, I will come back with all these implemented, come back with our tax rates, where we're at, and next week will be our final shot at it.
All right.
Can I just ask one quick one?
Yeah.
Can you send that to the board sooner rather than later so we can see what the bridge is that we
I
have
will try
to?
to have it by tomorrow.
I would rather see that
Either tomorrow night or Thursday morning you'll have it.
rather than just on the agenda with no actions that we could put forward.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Okay,
so
thank you.
go ahead and take 3 minutes here.
Say, Todd.